parliamentary.club.com. Professor Randy Barnett, how are you, my friend?
I am great, Mark, and I just want to thank you for having me on your program. I know you and I are old friends, but I know you don't have authors on your program very much. So this is a great, great honor for me.
Well, it's an honor for me, and I want people to know in fighting Obamacare, you were leading the way on the Commerce Clause, on promoting Article 5, Convention of the States. You're providing a lot of the intellectual heft in that effort and so forth and so on, so I want the folks to know what a patriot you are. Now, you have a great book here, Our Republican Constitution, Securing the Liberty and Sovereignty of We the People. First, let's start at the beginning, the Declaration of Independence. How does that fit into all this?
Yes, Mark, and Chapter 1 is about the Declaration of Independence, and it's because the Declaration of Independence actually is where the country got started. The Constitution was the second effort at a government, but the country itself was founded with the Declaration, and the Declaration tells us really what we the people is supposed to mean. And we the people are individuals who have the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then the next sentence after that says, it is to secure these rights, these individual rights, that governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers, not all power, not unlimited power, but their just powers from the consent of the governed. So the Declaration provides us with the political theory or the end of government, and then they had two tries at setting up a system of government, the Articles, and that didn't work out, and then they got it right with the Constitution.
You know, Randy, you hear over and over again, the popular will, the people vote, the majority decide. Is that really what our system is?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That popular will idea, that actually got going really more popularly in the 1820s and the 1830s with the rise of the modern Democratic Party, which called themselves the Democracy, because that party claimed to speak for the popular will. That one party itself was speaking for the popular will, and I have a chapter of the book about the rise of the modern political parties. The popular will was a Rousseauian idea. In fact, what the American Republic was about was the government was not us. The government are our servants, and they are supposed to protect our rights. And then we need a constitution to protect us from them. The Constitution is the law that governs those who govern us, and we should not be concerned that much with the will of the people. What we need elections for is to check power. That's what elections are for.
And the point is, the will of the people, that exists within the civil society, that the Constitution, your point is, exists, as you say, to control them, the government, the people we elect. And we don't get our powers from the government. We have powers independent of government, correct?
Absolutely. And our powers are our individual powers, and then we join with each other in our communities to make our communities what they want us to be. I don't believe in atomistic individuals. I know you don't either. I believe that we individuals have rights, but one of our rights are the freedom to associate with others and create communities. And those communities are going to vary from place to place because people have different views of morality and people have different kinds. I like to live in the city, but I also like to live in the country, and those are not the same thing. We need diversity.
Let's move up to this issue of, you have a Chapter 5, Losing Our Republican Constitution. I believe this chapter is absolutely crucial. Why don't you just briefly touch on this?
Yes, well, it had to do with the rise of progressivism, which was a late 19th century development. And the progressives were this idea, they had this idea that the elite could scientifically rule us better than we could rule ourselves. But they had a problem in enacting progressive legislation at the local level, and that is that the courts were stopping them from doing it. So they devised this argument for why it was that the courts should ignore those parts of the Constitution that limit the power of states and that limit the power of the federal government, and they should basically be restrained and let the government do what it wants. And that's really what Brandeis's laboratories of experiment rhetoric came from, was letting local governments regulate our liberties however they wish to. And that's when, and so it was this progressive assault on the Constitution led by progressives like Theodore Roosevelt, a Republican, led by Woodrow Wilson, who Roosevelt, as running as a third-party candidate, allowed to become president. They hated the Constitution. Well, Wilson hated the Constitution, and he thought we should have a parliamentary system here. And the progressives systematically undermined our Republican Constitution up to and through the New Deal.
And what about today?
Well, today what happened is with the appointment of Ronald Reagan and your friend and my friend Ed Meese coming to town into Washington, it used to be, in fact, one of the reasons why judicial nominations could simply be decided on the basis of qualifications is because everybody agreed in basically the Democratic Constitution, which was based on the popular will, and nobody disagreed. So now you just
let me stop you there because I jumped over that. You talk about the Democratic Constitution and the Republican Constitution. Let's focus on that first. I apologize. Go ahead.
The Democratic Constitution is the idea that because we the people is a group, and we the people must rule as a group, that the only way a group can ever rule is by majority rule. And so a constitution needs to be a democratic constitution so that the will of the people can become the law and the majority gets to rule. That's what a parliamentary system is. That's the democratic constitution. And Woodrow Wilson, for example, loved the parliamentary system and didn't like our constitution. A Republican constitution believes that we the people are individuals with individual inalienable rights, and that government exists to secure our rights, and the Constitution is needed to both empower the government so they can secure our rights, but also limit the powers that it gives to the government so it doesn't violate our rights. And in that realm, it's up to in the Democratic Constitution, judges are suspect because they're thwarting the will of the people. But in a Republican Constitution, we have to have judges to make sure all the constitutional actors are playing by the constitutional rules, which is something that they have not been playing by for a very long time.
Now, I had cut you off just to regroup with Reagan and Ed Meese. What was your point there?
Yeah, well, until Reagan and Ed Meese came to town, there basically was everybody basically agreed in this post-New Deal Democratic Constitution, including Republicans. That's why they didn't have to worry about ideology when it came to judicial nominations. But Ed Meese came to town and made a very famous speech to the American Bar Association in which he argued for what he called a jurisprudence of original intent. Now, it subsequently, primarily because of the influence of Nino Scalia, it quickly changed to the jurisprudence of original meaning as opposed to intent. So that's really what originalists are for, and Justice Scalia is the one who pushed that, even when he was on the D.C. Circuit. But that introduced into both the politics of the day and the conservative movement the idea of original meaning and originalism. And that set that now we had a fight on our hands, because now there was always the possibility of actually following the whole Constitution, not just the various parts that were consistent with majoritarianism. And at that point, you had contentious judicial nominations because Reagan started appointing people like Antonin Scalia and William Rehnquist, who believed in the limitations of our Constitution. And so ever since then, we've had a fight on our hands.
Because, as you point out, now we're engaged. Exactly. So the Reagan presidency, yeah.
Now there's two sides to the debate. As long as there was only one side to the debate, everybody was happy. But now there's two sides to the debate, so now, of course, everybody's ideological. Well, they're not ideological. Only we're ideological. When, in fact, what the book is about, here's another thing that is important about this book, Mark, and that is everybody says that, well, look, it's all political. The Republicans want Republican results in the courts, and the Democrats want Democrat results. I don't think that's what's going on. I think the Democrats want a constitutional order that's majoritarian, primarily, like a parliamentary system, and the Republicans basically want limited government and federalism and separation of powers. And that's not about results. That's about the kind of system we're going to have. And the left side of the court is uniformly committed to letting Congress do whatever it wants, and the right side of the court is half-heartedly committed to limiting Congress to its enumerated powers. And I say half-heartedly because you know that we've been appointing justices who have not been reliably consistent about the Constitution.
You know, Randy, and I want my audience to, this is a spectacular book. It is a spectacular book. It is available at Costco. It's available at Amazon. It's available at airports. It's every major bookstore, warehouse store. But as I say, you can get it on Amazon. I'm putting it up on my social sites on Facebook and Twitter. Ladies and gentlemen, you really need to arm yourself with this book. I had the honor of reading it a few months ago before it came in final publication. It is understandable. You know, Randy Barnett is one of the top brainiacs when it comes to the Constitution, but he has made this understandable. It's not dumbed down. It's an intelligent book, but it's understandable. You can grasp it. And now more than ever, Randy Barnett, I would argue, particularly in the course of this election, people need to familiarize themselves with their country, with their history, and their Constitution.
This election is illustrating the value of our Republican Constitution. We have 50 states. You don't just get to be the presidential nominee on one day and you have a primary that everybody votes on the same day and then you're it. You've got to go through the gauntlet of this state after another state after another state, each of whom have different constituencies, each of them have different rules, and you've got to survive that gauntlet. And that's part of the kind of system. I mean, the framers didn't have a party system in mind, but they did have a state system in mind. And that's part of the gauntlet you have to run before you earn the job of the Republican nominee. And you shouldn't be complaining about the rules, because those rules actually winnow the field until you get the people that can survive and do the best.
And it gives the people in each state an opportunity to participate in one way or another and figure out if they like a particular candidate or not.
Absolutely. You don't run up the score in Texas or in New York and California and let everybody else just sit and watch from the sidelines. Everybody gets to play in this particular game. And I want to say, in terms of the readability of the book, I strove for many years to write a book that my wife would read. And this is the first book that I wrote that my wife has read from cover to cover. It tells a story. I really was emulating the style that you write when you write your books, Mark, because I was trying to tell an overarching story from the founding, but I did it by means of individual stories as you go along. And one of the things she told me was 2 days after she read the book, she says, it sticks with you.